A man came to me 3 weeks ago in Los Angeles. He had been applying the law for money, specific money, a sum of $3,000. For 60 days, 60 days of nightly visualization, 60 days of feeling it real. And he said to me, Neville, I have done everything you told me to do. I see it. I feel it. I fall asleep in the wish fulfilled. But the money has not come. What am I doing wrong? I asked him one question. I said, during the day, when you are not practicing your technique, how often do you think about the money? And he looked at me as though I had asked him something absurd. He said, Neville, I think about it constantly. I check my bank account every morning. I watch the mail. I imagine where it might come from. I am always thinking about it. And I said to him, that is why it has not come. Now you may find this strange. You have been told to persist. You have been told to hold your desire before you. And yet I tell you this, the very moment you stop thinking about it, the very moment you forget to do your technique, the very moment you lose interest entirely, that is the moment it is done. That is the strange thing that happens right before money arrives. Not excitement, not anticipation, not vigilance, but a peculiar inner rest, a forgetting, a Sabbath. And if you do not understand why this is so, you will continue to delay the very thing you are working for. That is why it has not come. Now let me explain this to you carefully. If you understand what I am about to tell you, you will recognize the very moment your assumption has hardened into fact. You will know when the inner work is complete, and you will stop doing the one thing that delays every manifestation. The mistake is this: you watch for it. You have done your imaginal act. You have assumed the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You have fallen asleep in that assumption. And then you wake in the morning and immediately check your bank account. You watch the mail. You refresh your email. You wonder when it will come, how it will come, from whom it will come. And every time you do this, you confess that you do not have it. Listen to me carefully. If you were truly wealthy in consciousness, would you watch your mailbox for money? Would you check your bank balance with anxiety? No. The wealthy do not wonder when wealth will arrive. They assume it is already theirs. Consciousness is the only reality. The outer world is yourself pushed out. You do not manifest what you want. You manifest what you are. And when you watch for signs, when you look for evidence, you occupy the state of wanting. Wanting. And wanting, my friend, is the confession of lack. I have told you before and I will tell you again. Signs follow. They do not precede. You do not look for signs to prove it will happen. The sign is that you know it has happened. And when you know it internally, the watching ceases. The anxious checking stops. Not because you force yourself to stop, but because one who has does not look for what he already possesses. Let me give you an illustration that may clarify this. A farmer plants his seed in the spring. He covers it with soil, he waters it, and then he walks away. He does not return the next morning and dig up the seed to see if it is growing. He does not disturb the soil daily to check its progress. Why? Because he knows that the digging up, the constant inspection, would destroy the very thing he has planted. The seed requires darkness, it requires rest, it requires the Sabbath, pause. And so it is with your assumption. You plant it in consciousness through your imaginal act. You cover it with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and then you must leave it alone. The Sabbath is not Saturday or Sunday. The Sabbath is a state of mind. It is the state of rest that follows successful planting. When you can walk away from it entirely, when you are no longer compelled to check on it, that is your sign that the seed has been planted. But you say to me, Neville, surely I should take action? Surely I should look for opportunities. Now here I must be plain with you. The world has confused action with anxiety. I tell you, they are not the same thing. There is action from the state of wealth, and there is anxious searching from the state of poverty. The man who is wealthy in consciousness acts when inspired, but he does not search desperately. He does not scan the horizon for rescue. His action comes from fullness, not from fear. Do not let anyone, including yourself, confuse the peace of one who knows with the paralysis of one who doubts. They feel entirely different. You will know which state you occupy by the feeling in your chest when you think of your desire. Is it tight? That is fear. Is it open? That is faith. But hold this thought. There is a precise signal, a felt signal in your own body and mind that tells you the assumption has taken root. Without that signal, you will not know whether you are in the Sabbath rest or merely suppressing your desire out of exhaustion. I will give you that signal in just a moment, for it is the difference between those who manifest in days and those who wait in vain for years. The second mistake is continuing the technique after the work is done. Now you have been told to persist, and rightly so. I have told you to persist. But persistence does not mean endless repetition. Persistence means fidelity to the state until the inner conviction comes. And when it comes, you stop. Many of my students misunderstand this. They believe that if they stop their nightly imaginal act, they have failed in discipline. They come to me with guilt, saying, Neville, I forgot to do my technique last night. I got busy. I fell asleep before I could visualize. And they think this is failure. But I say to them, no. You stopped because the work was finished. The inner man had accepted it as true, and so the outer man lost interest. Let me tell you of a woman who wrote to me many years ago when I was still lecturing regularly in New York. She wanted a specific sum of money, not a vague desire for abundance, but a specific sum, $1,200. She needed it within 30 days to prevent the loss of her home. She began her imaginal act as I had instructed. Every night, in the state akin to sleep, she felt herself holding the money order in her hand. She heard her banker congratulating her. She felt the relief, the peace, the assurance that it was done. She did this faithfully for 2 weeks. And then life intervened. Her daughter became ill. She had to care for her day and night. And in the midst of that crisis, she forgot entirely about her imaginal act. She stopped visualizing. She stopped thinking about the money. For 10 days, she did not practice once. She wrote to me in distress. She said, Neville, I have failed. I abandoned the law just when I needed it most. I gave up. But 3 days after she wrote that letter, the money came. $1,200 from a source she had not anticipated. A distant relative she had not seen in years sent it unsolicited with a brief note saying he felt compelled to help her. When she wrote to me again, she was bewildered. She said, Neville, I do not understand. I stopped doing the work and yet it came. How can this be? And I wrote back to her. I said, you did not stop because you gave up. You stopped because you succeeded. The inner work was complete. Your subconscious mind had accepted the assumption as true, and so your conscious mind, having no more work to do, turned its attention elsewhere. The forgetting was not failure. The forgetting was the Sabbath. It was the sign that the seed had been planted and required no further interference. Do you see? Continuing to visualize after the subconscious has accepted your assumption is like digging up the seed after it has been planted. The work is not in the endless repetition. The work is in impressing the subconscious once, fully, completely. And you will know when that impression has been made because you will lose interest. Not as an act of will, but as a natural response to inner completion. Now hold this carefully, my friend. You must know the difference between the rest that follows success and the laziness that precedes failure. How do you know? The test is this. When you stop your technique, how do you feel? If you stop because you are tired, because you doubt, because you think it is not working, that is not the Sabbath, that is capitulation. But if you stop because you feel an inner satisfaction, a quiet knowing, a sense that it is already done, that is the Sabbath, that is the sign. There is a feeling. I cannot describe it perfectly to you, but you will recognize it when it comes. It is a coolness, a settledness, a deep inner knowing that says it is done, not hope, not belief, knowing. And when you feel that, you stop working. The harvest is assured. But here now is the third mistake, and this is the one that traps the most sincere students of the law. They try to force detachment before the assumption is complete. You have heard teachers tell you to let go, to detach, to release your desire to the universe. And so you try to stop caring. You try to cultivate indifference. You say to yourself, I will not think about the money. I'll act as though I do not need it. And you believe this detachment is faith. But it is not faith, it is suppression. And I tell you plainly, suppression is not law. It is psychology masquerading as mysticism. The teachers who instruct you to detach before you have assumed the wish fulfilled do not understand what I have taught. They have taken my words about the Sabbath and twisted them into a technique of denial. Put this from your mind. You cannot let go of what you have not first taken hold of in imagination. Detachment without prior assumption is not faith. It is fear dressed in spiritual language. True detachment is not something you do. It is something that happens to you when the inner work is complete. You cannot force yourself to stop caring before you have impressed the subconscious with the wish fulfilled. That is like trying to forget something by commanding yourself not to think about it. The very effort to forget makes you remember. Pause, let me illustrate this for you. Imagine a child before Christmas. He wants a particular toy. He talks about it constantly. He dreams about it. He asks for it daily. His desire is intense, consuming. Now you tell that child, let go of your desire, detach from the outcome. Do you think he can? Of course not. The desire is alive in him. But watch what happens Christmas morning. He opens the gift, the toy is in his hands. Now, does he continue talking about wanting the toy? No. He stops mentioning it. His desire has been fulfilled, and so the longing ceases. The detachment happens automatically, not because he willed it, but because the having replaced the wanting. That is the detachment I speak of. It is not a technique, it is the natural result of fulfilled desire. And here is the secret. You must feel that fulfillment before the physical manifestation. You must assume you already have the money, so fully and so naturally, that the wanting drops away while you are still waiting for the physical confirmation. When you have truly assumed the state, indifference will come, not as discipline, but as the inevitable feeling of one who already possesses what he desired. Now, here is where the lecture turns, my friend. Most who hear me stop right here in their understanding and miss the deeper truth. They think the watching is the only mistake. They think the endless technique is the only mistake. They think the forced detachment is the only mistake. But all three of these stem from a single root error, and if you do not understand that root, you will repeat these mistakes in new forms. I will show you that root now, for it is the key to everything. I knew a man in Los Angeles who came to my lectures in the early 1960s. He wanted a promotion at his firm. He had been passed over 3 times, and he was desperate, filled with resentment and fear. I told him what I am telling you now. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, live in the end. Feel yourself already promoted, he tried. But every day at work, he watched his supervisor. He looked for signs. He wondered if today would be the day. And because he was watching, because he was waiting, he perpetuated the state of not having. Months passed, nothing changed. Finally, one night, he imagined so vividly and so successfully that he woke the next morning feeling as though the promotion had already occurred. He could not explain it, but he felt different. He told me later that he went to work that day, and for the first time in months, he did not think about the promotion. He did not check in with his supervisor. He did not rehearse what he would say when it was offered. He simply worked with a quiet assurance that it was already done. 2 weeks later, the promotion was offered. But here is what he told me, and this is the part I want you to hear. Said, Neville, when they called me into the office, I was not surprised. I was not excited. I felt as though I already knew. It was the strangest thing. The outer confirmation felt secondary to the inner knowing I had experienced 2 weeks prior. That, my friend, is the Sabbath. That is the strange thing that happens right before money arrives. Not outer movement, inner rest. Pause now, you begin to see the pattern, do you not? The watching for signs, the endless technique, the forced detachment, all of these stem from the same root. You are living in the state of wanting rather than the state of having, and the state determines all. I have said to you many times, consciousness is the only reality. The world you see, the circumstances you experience, these are not causes. They are effects. The cause is always consciousness. The state you occupy in consciousness is the soil in which all things grow. If you occupy the state of lack, you will reap lack. If you occupy the state of fulfillment, you will reap fulfillment. And so the question is not whether the law works. The law always works. The question is, what state are you occupying? Not during your 5 minutes of evening visualization, but during the remaining 23 hours and 55 minutes of your day. What are you feeling then? That is what you are impressing upon the subconscious. That is what will appear in your world. Now I must insist on this, my friend. This is where most who hear me fail. They imagine beautifully at night and worry expertly during the day. And they wonder why nothing changes. I tell you, the imagining at night is wasted if you spend your waking hours in the opposite state. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot assume wealth for 10 minutes and poverty for 14 hours and expect wealth to appear. Consciousness does not keep office hours. It is always recording, always impressing, always manifesting the state you most frequently occupy. Make no mistake, if your dominant state is worry, you will manifest more to worry about, no matter how perfectly you visualize abundance before sleep. When you watch for money, you feel lack. When you continue your technique out of fear that stopping will cause failure, you feel doubt. When you try to force yourself not to care, you feel effort. And all of these feelings, lack and doubt and effort, these are states. And these states produce corresponding effects. But when the true Sabbath comes, when your assumption has fully penetrated consciousness, there is no effort. There is rest. There is a quiet knowing. There is a forgetting. Not because you have suppressed your desire, but because your desire has been fulfilled internally and the inner man is satisfied. And the outer man, the waking consciousness, loses interest because there is nothing left to work for. Pause, let me tell you how to recognize this in yourself. There are signs, not outer signs, but inner signs. First, you will notice that you stop rehearsing your imaginal scene. You have been falling asleep each night, imagining the money in hand, hearing the words that confirm it, and then one night, you forget to do it. Or you begin the scene and drift into sleep before completing it. And you do not feel guilty, you feel peaceful. Second, you will notice that you stop talking about it. The desire that once consumed your conversations becomes something you rarely mention, not because you are hiding it, but because it no longer feels urgent. Third, you will notice a peculiar indifference to the timing. Before, you wanted it now, you needed it by a certain date. But when the Sabbath comes, you find yourself thinking, it will come when it comes. And you mean it. The anxiety about when has dissolved. And fourth, and this is the most reliable sign, you will feel a deep inner knowing that it is done. I cannot describe this feeling adequately in words. It is not hope, because hope implies uncertainty. It is not belief, because belief implies effort to maintain conviction. It is knowing. The same way you know your own name. It is a felt fact. When you have that, my friend, the Sabbath has come, the work is finished. And though you may not yet see the money in your hand, you will know with absolute certainty that you will. Not because you are trying to convince yourself, but because the inner conviction has settled into you, like a stone dropping into still water. I experienced this myself many years ago. I will not burden you with all the details, but I needed a specific sum for passage. I imagined persistently, night after night, and then one morning I woke and I knew it was done. I did not know how, I did not know when, but I knew. And from that day, I stopped imagining. I stopped thinking about it. 3 days later, my brother sent the money unsolicited. He could not have known I needed it, but consciousness knew, and consciousness, being the only reality, arranged the means. The outer world conformed to the inner conviction. So I return now to where I began. My students come to me and say, Neville, the strangest thing, I stopped thinking about it, and then it came. And I say to them, that was not strange. That was the law in operation. You stopped thinking about it because the inner work was complete. The subconscious had accepted it. The Sabbath had come. And the physical manifestation followed, as it always does, the inner fact. Now, my friend, what do you do tonight? How do you apply this teaching? But before I tell you the technique you will use tonight, there is one final piece. It concerns the precise moment, the transition between waking and sleeping, when the assumption either takes root in your subconscious or evaporates into mere daydream. Most who practice the law lose the state in this exact moment and do not know it. I must address that now, for without this understanding, you may practice for months and impress nothing. Let me tell you plainly. First, you will construct your imaginal act. You will reduce your desire to a single scene, a scene which implies fulfillment. If you want money, you do not imagine the money coming. You imagine it already in hand. You see the bank statement with the balance you desire. You feel the texture of the bills. You hear someone congratulate you on your abundance. Make the scene specific. Make it sensory, make it short. Second, you will enter the state akin to sleep. This is the drowsy state just before you drift into unconsciousness. In that state, the conscious mind relaxes its grip and the subconscious becomes impressionable. You do not need deep meditation, you need drowsiness. Third, in that drowsy state, you will loop your imaginal scene gently, not with effort, not with strain, but with the naturalness of one remembering something that has already occurred. Feel it real. Do not try to make it real. Feel it as real. And fourth, you will fall asleep within that assumption. Let the scene carry you into sleep. This is critical. The subconscious is most receptive in that transition between waking and sleeping. Saturate that moment with your assumption. Do this tonight. Do it tomorrow night. Do it until you feel the inner shift I have described, not until you see outer evidence, until you feel inner conviction. And here is what you must understand. Some of you will feel that conviction after one night. Others will require weeks of persistent application. It does not matter. The time it takes is irrelevant. What matters is that you continue until the feeling comes. And you will know when it comes, because the characteristics I described will appear. The forgetting, the peace, the indifference to timing, the inner knowing. And when those appear, do not panic. Do not think you have lost your faith because you have stopped doing your technique. That stopping is not loss of faith, it is evidence of faith. It is the Sabbath. Rest in it. Do not return to anxious visualization out of fear. Do not start watching for signs to reassure yourself. The moment you do, you re enter the state of lack and delay the very thing you are waiting for. Trust the inner testimony. The outer world has no choice but to conform to it. Make no mistake, my friend, you are always manifesting. Every moment of every day, you are impressing the subconscious with the state you occupy. The question is never whether the law works. The law is impersonal and it works ceaselessly. The question is, what are you impressing? What state are you faithfully occupying? If you occupy lack, you will see lack. If you occupy fulfillment, you will see fulfillment. And the test of which state you occupy is not what you say during your evening practice. It is how you feel when you are not practicing. It is whether you watch for it or rest in it. It is whether you anxiously continue the technique or peacefully forget it. It is whether you strain to detach or naturally lose interest. The Sabbath is the day you rest in confidence that it is done. And when that day comes for you, and it will, you will understand what my students have been reporting to me for decades. You will stop caring, and the thing will come. Not because you stopped caring in order to get it, but because you stopped caring because you already had it in consciousness. And consciousness, being the only reality, must externalize what it contains. I have told you the principle. I have shown you the mistakes. I have given you the method. The rest is yours to apply. And now I tell you, my friend, the secret you have been searching for is this. The strange thing that happens right before money arrives is not a thing at all. It is the absence of a thing. It is the cessation of struggle, the end of watching, the quiet that follows successful impression. When you have truly assumed the wish fulfilled, you will know it not by what you feel, but by what you no longer feel. The anxiety will be gone. The compulsion to check and search and wonder will have lifted. And in its place will be a peace so natural, so ordinary, that you may not even recognize it as significant. But that peace, my friend, that forgetting, that indifference, that is the Sabbath, that is the sign, not the outer sign you have been watching for, but the inner sign that never lies. When the Sabbath comes, the harvest is assured. The money must follow as surely as day follows night, because consciousness is the only reality, and what is true in consciousness must become true in fact. Pause tonight when you retire. I ask you to do this just once. Construct your scene. Enter the drowsy state. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and then sleep in it. Do not wonder if it worked. Do not check tomorrow for signs. Simply do it, and let consciousness do its perfect work. You may wake in the morning with the inner knowing I have described, or you may need to persist for several nights or several weeks until that knowing comes. Both are well. What matters is not the time it takes, but that you remain faithful to the state until the conviction settles into you. And when it does, when you feel that quiet rest, that forgetting, that peace, do not doubt it. Do not return to anxiety because the outer world has not yet confirmed what you know within. Trust the inner testimony. The outer must follow. It has no choice. I have given you the law. Imagining creates reality. The world is yourself pushed out. These are not metaphors, my friend. These are facts. Literal facts. Test them. Prove them. Apply them tonight to your desire for money, and you will see. May you sleep this night in the Sabbath rest of your wish fulfilled. May your assumption harden into fact while you rest. May you wake knowing what you did not know before, that the work is done and the thing is yours. And may you recognize when the forgetting comes, that it is not failure but the sign of success. Until we meet again, my friend, live in the end. Good night.